Once again, I am asking, why are they just not nutting into cups before they go into battle?
It's the single greatest existential threat to humanity.
I'm not interviewing Christian right now. Shut the fuck up, okay? Shut up. Shut up. I'm not doing that, okay? Trump was a lesser evil. I'm vindicated forever. Okay, take a week off, brother. What a fucking delusional. You banned him till January 20th. I know. We'll come back during inauguration. If you keep asking me about clown girls and getting Christian to talk about clown girls, I'm going to permanently ban you. I'll ban you for a week. You're going to get permit if you keep it up.
Outrageous.
Hasan, let the boy speak. Lamont. Okay, you're right.
No. I'm chilling. I'm just here, dude.
Would you have rather had me make Christian sit over there outside? All right, chat, calm down.
He's actually sending me straight to Crenshaw.
This is my favorite new guy, by the way. What do you think his background is? He is supposed to be representing Trump's interests.
Dude, I'm saying he owned a Mattress King.
No, real estate developer.
Real estate developer? Okay, that makes sense.
Real estate developer who golfs at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump literally was like, what are you? You Jewish, right? You understand business. Go deal with your people.
Today, I can report to the American people, our adversaries are weaker than were when we came into this job 4 years ago. Just consider Russia. When Putin invaded Ukraine, he thought he'd conquer Kyiv in a matter of days. But the truth is, since that war began, I'm the only one that stood in the center of Kyiv, not him. And we laid the foundation for the next administration so they can protect the bright future of the Ukrainian people. I can also report to the American people, we're the first president in decades who's not leaving a war in Afghanistan to his successor. And on the war between Israel and Hamas, we're on the brink of a proposal that I laid out in detail months ago, finally coming to fruition.
Joe Biden will be remembered as an incompetent old fool and the man who oversaw and supported the genocide of Palestinians. That is how he will be remembered in history books. And perhaps to add insult to injury, Trump will most likely, at least in the early stages, be accredited with the hostage negotiations coming to fruition. Part of that is because, and I said this literally a year ago and repeated over and over again, I suspect Benjamin Netanyahu knows that Trump has his best interest in mind and also is a more reliable pro-Israel person than even someone who is ideologically committed to the Zionist project like Joe Biden. Since day one, Joe Biden had the opportunity to stop what Israel was doing. On October 10, he could have done so if he wished to do so, but he did not. This is not simple incompetence. This is not Israel dog-walking Biden. This is the grand design that the American State Department had for the region coming to fruition. He could have stopped it at any point and chose not to do so. People who personally believe that Israel controls the American government is a Zionist-occupied government or whatever, silly Nazi things that people say, fail to comprehend that Israel would not exist without unlimited American support. This is precisely the reason why numerous presidents have stopped Israel from engaging in further bloodshed. Joe Biden himself stopped Israel from engaging in further bloodshed in 2021. All it took was a phone call. Israel is an American state in the way that it functions. It's seen as a foreign ally so that there is a level of a removal of responsibility in the hands of U.S. empire to a certain degree. But ultimately, when America says jump, Israel says how high. Now, you pre-watch the current events, you can't be right this often. If I'm a stupid person and I can see from the outside, I'm pretty sure these guys can see it. Every single person was knowledgeable on what Israel was doing. Every single person. If we saw it here on twitch.tv/Hasanabi, every person in a position of power also saw it. There were some people who were like, Israel's a sovereign nation. The U.S. can't make them do whatever they want. Look at this. Look how easy it is. While Prime Minister Long pushed for a temporary ceasefire that amounted to the first phase of the three-stage proposal Israel submitted in May, the deal being finalized is increasingly closer to the original offer, clauses connecting first phase with two others, making it harder for Israel to resume fighting. There is no point where America was not almost singularly responsible for all of the atrocities that unfolded. Do you understand me? They would not have been able to do the consistent bombing campaigns without the United States of America's continued arms transfers. We are responsible for this genocide. Joe Biden is responsible for this genocide. Anthony Blinken is responsible for this genocide. They did it even though the overwhelming majority of the public wanted it to end. They continued doing it even though there was an election where this would be a major issue for the party in charge, and they still continued doing it. They tried to lie to the public through mainstream media over and over again. They undermined the existing little confidence that people had in mainstream media. They destroyed the last semblance of credibility that mainstream institutions had. And then as people recognized right from wrong, because they went on social media, places like TikTok, where they saw the reality with their own two eyes, they decided to ban TikTok.
Throughout my career, the world has undergone tremendous change. But certain things have always held true. At our best, America leads not only by the example of our power, but the power of our example.
Biden says he's leaving Trump a stronger country is just a way for him to basically do a little bit of ass covering here after all of the untold amounts of cruelty that he subjected the rest of the planet to. Ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, and MBs, we got Christian Divine in the building. TikTok extraordinaire, friend to many friends of the show. Christian, for those who don't know, how would you describe yourself? What are your political leanings?
Pretty far left leaning. I consider myself a socialist, super like hard cut. Yeah, I just like say straight up socialist, and whatever follows up with whatever you assume about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Ask about if his dad is a socialist. Wait, why?
My dad's a vampire. It's a whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Like literally, it's very. He used to sleep in a coffin. It's hard to explain, but yeah, my dad's not a socialist. That man is a capitalist till he dies.
Yeah, same. I feel that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were going to talk about the TikTok ban and what that will do to your career potentially as a TikTok content creator, first and foremost. But aside from that, we're currently in the process of covering this breaking news story where Hamas is seemingly very close to an agreement with Israel. And it seems as though the Trump train is here.
A ceasefire and hostage release deal in Gaza is, quote, very close, but sticking points remain. CNN's Jeremy Diamond live for us in Jerusalem this morning. Jeremy, what can you tell us about the state of these talks and why they seem to be accelerating here?
Well, Casey, it's clear that these parties are nearing the final stages of negotiations for a comprehensive ceasefire and hostage deal, but the question still remains as to whether or not they will get this deal across the finish line. A Hamas official telling us that several sticking points still remain in these talks, including over a proposed Israeli buffer zone inside the Gaza Strip where Israeli troops would remain. But over the weekend, we did see some really concrete movement in the right direction towards a deal. First of all, with the Israeli Prime Minister agreeing to dispatch the Mossad director, David Barnea, who has led the Israeli negotiating team at key junctures in these talks in the past. He was only supposed to travel to Doha, Qatar, if indeed there had been significant progress. And of course, here in Israel, there is this question of politics still being at play. The Israeli Prime Minister over the weekend meeting last night, in fact, with Bezalel Smotrich, that far-right finance minister who in the past has threatened to pull the rug out from underneath this coalition government if indeed the Israeli Prime Minister reaches out and agrees to a deal. Today, in less than 24 hours after Smotrich met with Netanyahu, he took to Twitter to lambast this draft agreement that appears to be nearing potential conclusion, calling this deal on the table a, quote, catastrophe, describing it as a surrender deal, and urging the Israeli government to continue fighting in Gaza until Hamas fully surrenders to Israel.
You are familiar, as am I, as are many people in this community, that the only hurdle in the pathway towards finalizing a ceasefire agreement, a permanent ceasefire agreement, has never really been Hamas.
No.
It has never been Hamas whatsoever. Hamas has actually brought forth, I believe, more than 39 different ceasefire negotiations since October 10. Since October 10, 2023, not October 10th, 2024. I mean, most of the agreements, including the one that was finalized and voted by the UN at the General Assembly on, were direct Hamas proposals. Joe Biden famously presented it as an Israeli proposal, And yet Israel was the party that refused to sign on to the proposal. Israel also continued killing numerous civilians, the tens of thousands. Israel's also obviously in the process killed almost every single journalist and engaged in what is known as a scholasticide, a deliberate targeting of scholars in the Gaza Strip, and the destruction of virtually every single institution of education in the Gaza Strip as well. In terms of the conversation surrounding this ceasefire process, Israel assassinated the principal negotiator, the civilian chief of the Hamas Politburo, Ismail Haniyeh, when he was visiting Tehran on Iranian soil. A double Monty, if you will, assassinating the principal negotiator who had never held a weapon. Yet another instance of Israel openly showing the rest of the world that they are not interested in a real ceasefire whatsoever and only continuing the death and destruction campaign. And I suspect something that I've talked about quite a bit, much like Ronald Reagan, I believe Donald Trump also cut a side deal with Benjamin Netanyahu when he was running for office. This was, of course, still preventable by a competent administration in charge, like the one that Joe Biden was not, that could have said, you're done. You're stopping this genocide immediately. And they could have done this at any given point. And yet they chose not to do so because of their grand design for the region before they gear up for the real enemy, the larger enemy, the more consequential enemy, China. Here's Jeremy Scahill saying, important to note that the Gaza ceasefire deal that may be reached soon is overwhelmingly consistent with the deal Hamas officially agreed to on July 2nd. Biden allowed Netanyahu to torch that deal and continue the genocide with a steady flow of U.S. weapons and political support. I can't begin to explain how much I hate Biden in the midst of all of this. Trump's Mideast envoy Steve Witkoff held a tense meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu on Saturday night, during which the former leaned hard on the Israeli premier to accept compromises necessary to secure a hostage deal by January 20th. Two officials familiar with the matter told Times of Israel. Witkoff's pressure on Netanyahu appears to have had an effect, with the two officials familiar with the negotiations saying that key gaps were filled in the talks over the weekend. While Prime Minister long pushed for a temporary ceasefire that amounted to the first phase of the three-stage proposal Israel submitted in May, the deal being finalized is increasingly closer to the original offer, making it harder for Israel to resume fighting. We have maintained this level of power and influence over Israel since day one. Day one. This could have happened on October 10, 2023. So just remember that when people say, oh, Biden was trying his very best. Remember every single person that lied in that process as well. Every single person in the media, all these like Twitter losers that kept repeating the position over and over again that Biden was trying his best. And you guys simply don't understand that Israel's a foreign ally. They're a sovereign state. They can get their weapons from elsewhere. That is a lie. And many are openly lying to the American public. Ultimately, it is America that wants Israel to do this. And I think that's hard for a lot of people. Like, it's a hard pill for a lot of Americans to swallow, where they're like, why is this like tiny foreign ally of ours getting so much attention and so much power? It can't be that our leaders are using our tax dollars and our publicly funded research and our weapon systems to allow these atrocities to continue.
The medical journal The Lancet said the death toll in Gaza has likely surpassed 70,000 people. The war has led to charges of genocide against Israel and has been fueled by American weapons and billions of taxpayer dollars. This is the scene filmed in May by CBS News in Gaza. Children on top of rubble playing with ammunition casings. A close look reveals where they come from. Printed on the side, USA, DOD for Department of Defense. Across this now decimated 25-mile-long strip of land, America's stamp is everywhere.
The reality has always been clear. America wanted this to happen. Ultimately, Israel is incredibly valuable to the grand designs that America has in this resource-rich region. Is it still really that valuable, even after all this insane shit? Yes, because at its core, Westerners do not trust the volatile region to be in the hands of Muslim Arabs. They can cut security cooperation agreements. They can treat Egypt and Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf states as, partners in their crimes, but they do not have the same level of trust that they do for Israel. Israel is seen as the only extension of Western empire in the region, far beyond the potentially volatile Arab nations that could have their own version of a coup d'etat. Egypt comes to mind, or even Saudi Arabia sometimes chooses not to play ball with Western powers at the end of the day. Look at OPEC Plus in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This does not mean that the leadership of the Gulf nations and all of the other Arab security partners in the region are not also playing a very important role in this process of defending Israel and of continuing and maintaining Israel's genocide. They certainly do. I'm just simply telling you what America's opinion is and what the Western powers' opinions have always been. These guys are, at the end of the day, somewhat unreliable allies, and not because the leadership doesn't defend American interest all the time, but because the population unironically is not a fan of Israel. That's why I always repeat the position that like the leadership of these Arab nations are oftentimes at odds with the broader population. So that creates a massive security risk if they were to treat Saudi Arabia, for example, like they do Israel. All it would take is for the people to rise up and overthrow their leadership. This most likely will never happen in Israel. The leaders of those nations never represented the people's beliefs and opinions. The only reason they are in power is due to superpowers supporting them, and in return, they sell out the resources of the nations. Exactly.
So while this has fallen out of the headlines a bit, the United States has remained deeply engaged in trying to seek a deal that would first and foremost bring the hostages home, but also halt the fighting, enable a massive influx of humanitarian assistance to Gaza. We have been focused on that deal for months. This has been a long time coming. We think a deal has been on the table that the parties should be able to agree to for quite some time. Hamas, up till now, has been resistant and reluctant to actually take that deal.
I like that they still maintain the position that Hamas has been reluctant to take this deal like over and over again when it serves no purpose at this point. But they will keep lying this way. And the reason why I think it's important to recognize why they keep lying this way, if the American State Department lies right now directly in front of your eyes all the time, relentlessly about Hamas being the spoiler to this deal, then don't you think maybe Bill Clinton was also lying back in the day? It's just so strange that it was always the Palestinian envoys that were playing the role of spoilers over and over again and not actually showcasing their willingness to take on incredibly unreasonable demands being made by Israel. It's the same exact thing that unfolded time and time again. Ronald Reagan did this. Richard Nixon also did this. It's the same exact principle. And I think that the obvious party that is perhaps most responsible in this search, in this instance, is still very much the Democratic Party, because Donald Trump is not singularly the greatest deal maker of all time, and that he was able to apply enough pressure to Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay? The very same levers of power were in the hands of the Biden administration. He could have simply just pulled Israel back at any point with something as simple as a phone call, and he refused to do so. That's it.
People were saying that they were ascendant when President Biden took office, that they would surpass the U.S. economically, that they would outpace us technologically. Nobody's saying those things with the same degree of confidence anymore, if they're saying them at all, in part because of the performance of this administration led by the president. And so we believe that he is leaving a very strong hand, as you say, to our successors, a strong hand in Europe, a strong hand in the Indo-Pacific, a strong hand in the Middle East, and it will be up to them to take that work forward.
One of the things you mentioned was NATO, a stronger NATO.
Thank God. Thank God. He did AUKUS. He did NATO. He did NATO! He did it. He did it, Jack. Things are so much better overall. Meanwhile, we're talking about a stronger NATO, and like virtually all of our European allies are in the throes of straightforward fascist mobilization, just like we did to ourselves, to be fair.
This is only tangentially related, but something that I think people super underrate about like why Trump relates with people so hard is 'cause people don't understand how much Americans don't want to give money to other places.
Yeah.
And he'll regularly speak in the language of like this whole lower the age to 18 is like, we have to stop giving them money. And that's the thing, like even with Trump's position on Israel, people think that he's going to stop giving them money. And like, that's what matters. Cause like what Republicans don't care about Palestine, but they do care about like the idea of us not giving people money.
Yeah, Republican voters, depending on what kind of Republican voters they are either have an endless loyalty and commitment to the nation state of Israel, far beyond what any American Jew you might suspect is loyal to the state of Israel, because you have the evangelical Christians in the base of support for the party that are the most rabid supporters of Israel.
Like the most money, right? Like essentially like the biggest donors.
Yeah. But outside of that, yeah, the average Republicans, like no Republican living in freaking Louisiana that's not like constantly going to an evangelical mega church is going, that's right, I really do hope that Donald Trump gives more money. I really hope that Donald Trump gives more money to Israel. Like that's not a real point of concern. Americans love to fancy themselves as peaceful doves, that they want to feel like America's violence and America's military actions around the world are just like an unfortunate but necessary military intervention. They don't want to think of it like this brutal affair of empire that consistently seeks out new targets in an effort to secure the extraction of natural resources and labor power that's consistently undermined. Like they don't want to think about it. They don't want to think about the process of how they get their, $5 jalapeno poppers. They want to.
I mean, you gotta give the people don't crave democracy. You gotta force democracy on them, and then they'll know they like it. And that's like general Middle East policy.
Yeah.
What is happening in Gaza would not be able to happen without U.S. arms. That's without a doubt.
Wait, what? That's who? I'm shocked, guys. Let me tell you how shocked and confused I am. What? But everyone told me that Israel's a sovereign state. Everyone told me that Israel's a sovereign state and they could do this. They could get their weapons elsewhere if they wanted to, even though 70% of their arms come directly from the United States of America. 70%.